Hello and good day, Mike Adcock with an update on Severe Tropical Storm Pabuk in the Western Pacific. This update is based on the 12 Zulu JMA advisory from the 25th of September. At 12Z, the center of Pabuk was about 605 kilometers south of Tokyo. Winds are at 60 knots, gusting up to 85, and the movement is now moving a little eastward, north-northeast at 11 knots, pressure 970 hectopascal. Do have quite a few tropical watches and warnings associated with Pabuk. Of course, for storm information specific to your area, please monitor the forecast and warnings issued by your local meteorological agency. Kind of give you a quick rundown of what's going on out there. This is from the Japan Meteorological Agency. What you see in yellow are for advisories, red for warnings. Coming up here, this is the heavy rain. Not a whole lot, and keep in mind that some of this is associated with the approaching cold front that's exiting out of the Sea of Japan. And then as we get a little closer to like around the Tokyo area, these are going to be more on the tropical side. Here are some flood advisories. Pretty much you see the same areas there highlighted. Storm or gale force winds, that's going to be over a larger portion, again mostly along the coastal areas. Again, combination of the tropical storm and the approaching cold front. High waves is also going to be an issue, again along the coastal areas, especially to the south where you're going to get higher waves from Pabuk. Here's storm surge advisories. And really from there, not expecting a whole lot beyond that. Anyway, do want to point out though, and you can see here on the infrared satellite imagery, dealing with about a 25 kilometer eye with Pabuk. Along this eye though, very large concentric ring of convection along the eye wall there. We'll touch on the intensity in a minute. JMA again saying 60 knots. The American agency is going more toward 90 knots based on satellite. Again, I'll talk about that on the Dvorak page, but there is a discrepancy there. One thing I also want to point out though, look at the cirrus aloft. Good outflow. Do have that anticyclone positioned over the storm. You'll notice though a lot more enhanced outflow on the north side of the storm, and that's just with that approaching cold front helping out there. Again, the system is starting to track more easterly now as it rounds the northwestern periphery of the subtropical ridge. Alright, here's a satellite analysis. This you can find over at westernpacificweather.com. This is from 3 Zulu. First, do want to point out this is the remnants of Manyi. You saw this one last week roll through and give some significant rainfall for a large majority of Japan. There is the associated cold front, kind of digs down, crosses that area of high pressure that we've been tracking. Get down here, becomes more of a shear line at this point. JMA is kind of they're analyzing it as a stationary boundary, but Pabuk is starting to get wrapped up in that. Of course, this is the main feature that we're dealing with. Large area of large area of low pressure exiting out of Russia, ushering in a lot of cool air out of Russia and China. Behind it, cold front with that is draped across the Sea of Japan, entering Japan, and it has exited out of the Korean Peninsula. Again, this is going to be a very similar situation to Manyi, where you have the storm coming in from the south, cold front comes through, crosses Japan, and then pushes the storm out to sea. The difference here is going to be timing. Whereas Manyi was allowed to get a little closer to Japan, make landfall, this cold front is going to allow Pabuk to shift out sooner. And kind of going with the JMA surface analysis here, this is from 6 Zulu. and kind of see what I'm talking about. Again, here's that large area of low pressure off to the north exiting out of Russia. cold front, or they depict it as a stationary boundary, entering through northern Japan into the Sea of Japan. Do have that shear line, again, wrapping around Pabuk. Do want to quickly point out, you have this tropical depression just to the west of the Philippines, and that's enhancing the monsoon trough for them. So heavy showers for portions of the Philippines that they'll be dealing with. That being said, come tomorrow, this is actually a Thursday morning at about 9 o'clock Japan time, starting to get wrapped up with that cold front. Not really expecting a whole lot of near-term weakening with this system, and then by Friday morning it starts to get wrapped up again, just like Mani, and that's going to push off to the east of Japan. Meanwhile, high pressure builds back in over the Korean Peninsula and Japan, ending the work week as well as entering into the weekend with pretty fair conditions. So as that high pressure sets up, then our attention will be turning to this next area of low pressure coming out of Russia. Again, keep an eye on these area of low pressures across the south for potential further development. Alright, here is the JMA track on Pabuk. Again, you can see that sharp northeasterly turn in response to that cold front. Currently 60 knots, gusting up to 85. Again, there is a discrepancy there. Talk about that shortly. By this time tomorrow, not expecting a whole lot of change in strength. That's just because the system is starting to become extratropical. Still looking at sustained winds of like 55 knots by 12Z on Thursday evening. And then the thing that we're going to notice though is very fast acceleration with this storm. Right now north-northeast at 11 knots. In 24 hours expecting to be northeast at 23 knots. Here is the JMA forecast, or JTWC forecast. Here is the discrepancy that I'm pointing out. You'll notice current intensity 90 knots. Now, first off, we do have to note that there is a difference in scales here. JMA is using the World Meteorological Organization standard 10-minute sustained winds, whereas the JTWC is using the American standard 1 minute. Why that's important is because JTWC is using a 1 minute standard, the winds tend to be higher. You're not getting as many peaks and lulls, so that sampling size drops down in about 1/10 of, obviously a tenth of the sampling size. So you pick up a lot more of those peaks, which normally results in about a 14% higher wind reading. That being said, if JMA is saying 60 knots, JTWC should be showing about 70 or so, but they're going with 90. And again, they're using Dvorak. Well, actually, both agencies are looking at Dvorak. It's just interesting the discrepancies of what they're seeing. You're looking at a T 3.5 versus a 5.0. So, nonetheless, near or right around typhoon strength, and some slow weakening over the next couple days as this system begins to interact with the cold front over the Sea of Japan. Do want to quickly throw this up. This is the model guidance, or actually this is the GFS here, but the models are in pretty good agreement over the next couple hours. Not a whole lot of deviations there. This system could continue to move along with the westerlies, affecting the Aleutian Islands before rounding the northeastern periphery of the subtropical high. Again, continued weakening over the next couple of days as it fizzles out and becomes an extratropical cyclone. Alright, Dvorak. Up at the top there, JMA's analysis. Looking at 3.5, and they say the model and pattern agrees with that, which leads them to their 60 knot analysis. NESDIS, on the other hand, is going with 4.5. And what they're saying there, alright, first, and this is based on the AMS UPass at about 640 Zulu, looks like the low-level center and the mid-level center are starting to decouple. And it's just starting. It hasn't really kicked in yet. That being said, you do have an off-white eye, and you can kind of see it right there. Off-white eye It's embedded in medium gray, which gets you a 4.5. The light gray that surrounds it here doesn't really add anything, so keep it at a 4.5. Furthermore, 24 hours ago looked very similar to this, also 4.5, Mets 4.5, Patterns 4.5, so they call it 4.5. They left the current intensity though at 5.0, and that's just because, and that's the second number here, that's just because it's starting to weaken. The Dvorak rules keep the current intensity slightly behind what's being picked up on the objective satellite image. Break, that being said, JTWC on the other hand is going 5.0 across the board. And what they're seeing again, off-white eye embedded in dark gray, which gets you a 4.5 plus a half for the eye adjustment, so that gets you 5.0. They said the model and the pattern agree with 5, so 5.0. The advanced Dvorak, on the other hand, pretty much in the ballpark there. 4.9 with a current intensity of 5.2, which would get you about 95 knots. So 95 knots, at least from 3 agencies, seem like the better solution than JMA's. Obviously, JMA, they tend to be a little more conservative, and it depends on what you're really looking at here. There probably is a very small pocket of 90 to 95 knot winds with this system, but it's going to be very, very concentrated to one corner of the eye wall there. Alright, looking at more analysis here. Right now, Pabuk is in a loop of warm water. Not going to last much longer, really, as it picks up and moves with that frontal boundary. It's going to tread over some cooler waters. Looking at the upper air analysis here, you can see that great outflow on the poleward side here, picking up winds 50 to 100 knots to the north-northeast of the system. And then here's our cold front. You can see on the water vapor imagery with wind speeds well over 100 knots with that. Picking up actually some closer to 150 knot jet max with the polar front jet supporting that cold front. So again, typhoon or strong severe tropical storm merging with a cold front. This is what we saw with Manny. This is that time of year. Looking at the mid-levels here, not really much more to add. Do have some strong mid-level winds on the backside of this cold front as that exits out of the Sea of Japan. So we're talking about a strong polar front jet. Shouldn't be a shock. Wind shear is going to be an issue, and that's pretty much in line with what we're saying here. Again, shear well over 100 knots with this system, and so yeah, it's going to quickly become a bear clinic system over the next couple of days. That concludes the update today on Pabuk. Of course, you can get this and other updates on Western Pacific analysis over at westernpacificweather.com. You can also follow along on Twitter and Facebook and join in on the conversation at storm2k.org. You can also follow me at Twitter at Senior Pepper. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day. Be safe out there and take care.